On this week's NESN Patriots Podcast, we will discuss New England's first loss of the season Sunday night against the Baltimore Ravens, and we will do a bit of a first half recap to the Patriots season. Hello and welcome to the NESN Patriots Podcast. I am Doug Kyed, joined as always by Zack Cox. Zack, how are you doing today on this fine Wednesday afternoon?
I'm doing particularly well today, Doug. Like many of these Patriots players, I'm very excited to have a weekend off. A weekend away from football, or maybe not away from football entirely, but away from writing about football and being as engaged as we are in this team. It's nice to get away for a little bit.
Yeah, and get away we will try to do over these next few days. The Patriots had their first and only practice of the week Wednesday. Patrick Chung and Ben Watson were not on the field. So, they're off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They'll be back in here on Monday, probably for meetings. Guess we'll see if they practice. Not really sure what the week is going to look like next week for the Patriots, but it is sort of unique this week in that the Patriots and their next opponent, the Eagles, are both on a bye week. So that helps, I think, in some regard, because everyone who doesn't get the bye week, all the young staffers on this team, won't have an extra game to watch of the Eagles after Sunday or Monday. They can really get way out ahead of the Eagles, and the Eagles can do the same thing for the Patriots over this bye week.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a unique circumstance. This is going to be the third consecutive team that the Patriots will be playing that are coming off their bye.
Yeah,
the Browns and the Ravens also were coming off their bye. You don't usually see the same team come off the bye, or two opponents come off the bye at the same time. One quick note, the Patriots are expected to practice next Monday according to the tentative schedule that we have right now. But going back to that bye, I looked up some of these statistics the other day on about how the Patriots perform after the bye, how they tend to kind of come back after getting those 2 weeks off. And since 2001, the Patriots have the second best winning percentage, or Patriots are tied for the second best winning percentage among all NFL teams coming off the bye. They're 14-4 in 18 games. Interestingly, Philadelphia Eagles also 14-4, and the only team better than them is the Baltimore Ravens. They are 15-4. The 15 being the game that they just played on Sunday. So not surprising for a Bill Belichick coach team and a team that just in general has such a high winning percentage. But the Patriots traditionally are very good coming off the bye. They're also 4-1 in their last 5 games after byes. So Bill Belichick definitely good at kind of getting his team refocused during the span.
For sure, and they are coming off their first loss of the season, as I mentioned earlier, against the Baltimore Ravens. That was a bit of a surprise for me. I sort of thought that the Patriots would be able to, keep that ball rolling into the bye week, and that certainly was not the case. They lost 37-20 against the Ravens, and they got out to an early deficit and just really never got it back going. They looked certainly better in the second quarter and the third quarter, and it looked like they were going to make it a game, and then a pretty costly fumble by Julian Edelman really turned the tables yet again, and the Ravens were able to put together 2 extremely long drives basically to finish out the game, and the Patriots had no opportunity really to get over that deficit, that 17-point deficit by the end there. I was certainly surprised, and I'm not sure if this presents a blueprint to beat the Patriots, but I think it's good to get this loss out of the way now in week 9 so that the Patriots can fix it over the bye week and fix it over really the second half of the season until the games really do start to count.
Definitely. I mean, you could say that this presents a blueprint for being the Patriots, but to execute that blueprint, you would have to have Lamar Jackson and this kind of Ravens offense, which no other team in the NFL does. And overall, especially after rewatching this game, I don't think it certainly wasn't as comprehensive a defeat as the final score would suggest, and that early 17-0 deficit would suggest. I've seen people compare it to the Titans game that the Patriots lost last season. Maybe it's kind of comparable in the fact that they were kind of outplayed in a mid-season loss and gave themselves kind of plenty of time to regroup and recover after that. But that game in Tennessee last year was basically just a beatdown from start to finish. The Patriots were terrible in that game. They were just roundly outplayed for the entire 60 minutes. In this game, the Patriots were outplayed in the first quarter, clearly, outplayed in the fourth quarter, clearly. But in the second and third, they were probably the better team for especially the second quarter and long stretches of that third quarter. The Patriots came back almost all the way from 17-0. They had a chance to score a touchdown right before halftime that would have made it 17-17. They settled for a field goal from the 1 yard line, which was kind of a debated decision by Bill Belichick, but I think I agree with it. The Patriots were getting the ball back to start the second half. Their offense had been moving, and their offense did move to start the second half. They drove, I believe it was 40 or 50 yards before that Julian Edelman fumble for a touchdown. And then even after that Julian Edelman fumble for a touchdown, they went back and scored right away on a 75-yard touchdown drive, still trailed by just 4 points with 8.5 minutes left in the third quarter. So the Patriots had every opportunity to win this game. Then the Ravens just really kind of put the screws down with those 2 long touchdown drives. I mean, you go back and look at some of the stats on these drives, and they're pretty remarkable. The first one was just over 8 minutes. It was the longest drive against the Patriots since 2017. Second one was 9 minutes and 35 seconds, the longest drive against the Patriots since 2011, which is obviously a very long time, and it's been a long time since a team has been able to just kind of grind the Patriots down. The Ravens actually had the 3 longest drives of the season against the Patriots. All came in this Ravens game. So, yeah, it was up until that end, though, the Patriots did play well. They recovered. They came back from that early deficit. So I think there are a lot of positives to take away from this game, honestly.
Well, let's get into, I guess, the negatives first, because as you mentioned, there were a decent amount of positives. We've been kind of going over them over the last few days. But to you, what was the biggest issue on those 2 drives to end the game, and then the start that they got out to? Because it wasn't the pass defense. I thought the pass defense played well, and I thought that they did a pretty decent job of limiting Lamar Jackson for a lot of the game too. I mean, he averaged less than 4 yards per carry. That's including the kneel downs there at the end of the game. He threw for less than 200 yards. The bigger producers in that Ravens offense were Mark Ingram and Alex Collins.
Gus Edwards.
Yeah, I know, and Gus Edwards. Collins was with the Ravens last year. For the 2 biggest plays, a 55-yard run by Mark Ingram, and then the 12-yard touchdown run by Gus Edwards, they were really choosing to run at Adam Butler and Juwan Bentley. And Butler got kind of pushed out on the big run by Mark Ingram. Bentley didn't really fill the gap that he was supposed to, and then it was sort of a similar situation on that touchdown run by Gus Edwards, where
back-to-back plays too.
Yeah, back-to-back plays where they ran right back at Adam Butler and at Juwan Bentley. It just sort of seemed like they were going big to start the game, and the big bodies in the middle of the defense weren't able to actually contain the way they were supposed to. And they sort of fixed things there in the second and third quarter by going a little bit smaller, by putting more defensive backs on the field. But then that really didn't work in the back half of the game as well, when the Ravens were able to put together those 8 and 9 minute drives. So other than, just singling out Butler and Juwan Bentley, what to you was the biggest issue for the Patriots defense to start the game and then on those long drives at the end?
Well, early on, I thought we talked last week, kind of debated how the Patriots were going to defend this rushing offense. Early in the game, they tried going with a more traditional kind of 3-4
base defense
that we haven't really seen from them a lot this season, even though it technically is their quote-unquote base defense. They're usually much more in kind of a 2-4-5 or something along those lines. But yeah, they tried the 3-4, and the 3-4 did not work. I mean, I went back and charted this game in the 3-4 in those first 3 drives, which resulted in 2 Ravens touchdowns, 1 Ravens field goal. They went 3-4 on 10 plays, gave up 132 yards. So 13.2 yards per play.
Not great.
Including those 2 runs that you just mentioned, the 53-yard run and the 12-yard touchdown run. Then they basically just completely abandoned that strategy. They didn't run another snap out of the 3-4 until the final drive of the game, which was a pretty kind of nondescript one. They really went back to their standard defense with kind of a 2-4-5 and then switching over to that 1-4-6 kind of hybrid nickel dime look on third downs. And they slowed down the Ravens offense for a lot of the game. using that. That was basically what they were able to do kind of in that second quarter and a lot of the third quarter. The biggest issues were on these final 2 drives, there weren't really any kind of huge breakdowns. It was just kind of a sort of an attritional kind of thing because they forced them into a lot of third downs. I mean, Lamar Jackson made a couple of very good plays, but the first one was his pass to Mark Andrews on the third down and 3rd and 5 on that first drive.
Over Terrence Brooks,
Beat
right?
Terrence Brooks. It was Terrence Brooks had good coverage on the play, but Lamar Jackson, he stood in the pocket. He put it in a good spot. Great play from him. He also had another, probably his most impressive play of the night was that long scramble closer to the goal line on that same drive where he kind of rolled to his right, saw John Simon, turned back to his left, kind of evaded Kyle Van Noy, ran past a couple guys. So there were a couple of those standout Lamar Jackson plays, but a lot of it was just sort of little, tiny kind of plays that wouldn't seem like a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, but they just stacked up. I mean, there was the 4th down conversion where Baltimore probably should have been called for an offensive pass interference. Right. They ran a little pick play that Willie Snead was able to get away from Jason McCourty. McCourty trying to run past Seth Roberts, who basically threw a pick 3 or 4 yards downfield. I'm sure Bill Belichick was not happy about that call. Then there was a couple penalties. There was a neutral zone infraction on Dante Hightower, hands to the face on Jason McCourty, and those were all kind of game-changing plays because all 3 of those plays extended drives, and those were really kind of it was a mix of kind of standout plays and self-inflicted errors is what I kind of came up with for these last couple drives.
I feel like people almost maybe I'm just living in my own little bubble, but I feel like people almost forget that those last 2 drives happened because I think the storyline coming out of the game was, they were terrible to start the game, but then they got it back together, and then people sort of forget that, but the Ravens put together 2 massive drives to end the game. And I feel like, the corrections they made were great, but they still allowed those last 2 drives, and they were just little things piling up on one another. But there was, even after that Julian Edelman fumble, they still could have won that game.
Easily.
But you cannot win the game when you allow them to put together, 17 minutes?
I think they held the
18
ball.
18 minutes?
I think it was almost 18. It was like 18 of the final 23 minutes of the game.
That's just insane.
Yeah. It's impossible
you cannot
to
win a game when you're doing that. So I don't know. That's almost the bigger thing that I feel like they have to fix, because they fixed the early stuff by just going back into their nickel and dime defenses. But those last 2 drives, if you can move the ball on a defense so efficiently, even if there's penalties involved, and even if there's some blown calls, that's the way that you can beat a team if you just can't get your defense off the field. And I think obviously the Patriots defense was tired at that point. The Patriots offense hadn't done them a ton of favors early in the game, so maybe just all those minutes were piling up on each other there at the end of the game. But that's, I think, the bigger thing that they have to fix is just avoid those mental errors. And, I was actually talking to, I'll give a shout out to Evan Lazar. I was talking to him yesterday when we actually came in the building a little bit later. And he made the good point that a lot of the times through the first 8 weeks of the season, and hopefully he doesn't mind that I'm bringing this up, there were balls that bounced the Patriots' way. There were interceptions that were batted in the air, and then they fell into Devin McCourty's hands, or they fell into Stephon Gilmore's hands. And there was at least one that I can think of in that game. A ball flew in the air, and it dropped and hit the grass.
I think there were 2, yeah.
And if either one of those, falls in the hands of a Patriots player, then that's the way that this game gets a little bit flipped. And there were even ways that the game did get flipped in this game. Mark Ingram's fumble, Cyrus Jones' muffed punt. So it's not as if this is a game like there's been games in the past. I remember, I think it was an Eagles game in 2015 or something, where just everything went against the Patriots' way.
The drop kick game.
Yeah. This wasn't one of those games. Things did actually bounce the Patriots' way at a certain point in the game, but then they lost it again. So I don't know. I think that there's no real reason to be concerned about this team. The Patriots are 8-1. They're coming off their only loss of the season. It actually came at sort of a bad time because now there's 2 weeks to think of it. But it was certainly a surprise that they were able to get beat this badly, given the way that their defense had been performing through the first 8 weeks of the season.
I think one thing that's going to be really interesting to watch going forward is how, now the fact that they're playing real, actual NFL quarterbacks. Yes. And obviously Lamar Jackson is still kind of a work in progress. He's not he wouldn't be considered kind of one of the elite passers in the NFL.
Right.
But he showed a lot of poise in this game. There was a lot of plays, especially, I mean, the one that really stands out is the one I mentioned before, that third down conversion to Mark Andrews over Terrence Brooks. Patriots basically ran the same kind of look with the cover zero blitz that they used against Sam Darnold and a lot of these other quarterbacks to great effect in the past. Chase Winovich got great pressure. He was right in Lamar Jackson's face while he was throwing the ball, and he stood in there. He didn't panic. He didn't do that kind of fade back and try to throw it over the top kind of thing. If he did, it probably would have resulted in an interception or at the very least a pass breakup. Yeah. But the fact that the Patriots met a quarterback finally that is kind of not going to be immediately thrown totally off his game by some of the moves that they pull. Now, over the next couple of weeks, they've got Carson Wentz, they've got Dak Prescott, they've got Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. This is a murderous row of quarterbacks that they're going to have to face, and obviously all of those quarterbacks are a little bit more conventional than Lamar Jackson. Even Deshaun Watson, who is a very good runner, is a little bit more of a conventional quarterback. It's going to be very interesting to see if this continues or if they can kind of turn it back to sort of having the effects on those subpar quarterbacks that they were having early in the season. Can they have those same effects on quarterbacks who are actually kind of legitimate NFL players?
Yeah, no, it will definitely be interesting to see how they actually, perform coming out of this bye week, because it's a very tough stretch, and those quarterbacks are all high quality quarterbacks. You're not facing, as you mentioned, the Luke Falks or the Ryan Fitzpatricks of the NFL anymore. Let's get into some of the positives, because there were, as I mentioned, actually quite a few of them. I think that, first of all, I already mentioned it, but Patriots secondary still played really well in this game. Terrence Brooks allowed the catch to Mark Andrews, but there weren't really many glaring breakdowns in coverage in this game from what I can remember. Two other major things were that Mohamed Sanu was Tom Brady's most targeted wide receiver. He caught 10 passes for 81 yards and a touchdown in this game, so definitely good to see him and Brady getting that chemistry going as well as they have in only his second week with the team. The final one is just that I thought James White ran really well in this game, and I'm curious to see if this is a way that the Patriots can actually sort of fix their rushing attack over the second half of the season, because it really has struggled quite a bit through that first half of the season. I thought that actually Sony Michel ran pretty well in this game. Rex Burkhead ran pretty well, but James White had 9 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown, and you were seeing them run, I don't know if it was more, but White was finding success on zone runs, and you'd think that would probably be the way to get James White going, and the way to combat some of the injuries the Patriots have had, with James Devlin on injured reserve, Jakob Johnson on injured reserve, some injuries there at tight end. I think that, by shifting away a little bit from the power run scheme, because this offensive line actually isn't playing very well right now, and they certainly aren't getting this second level like they need to on some of those power runs. Shifting a little bit more to zone runs when you've got a quicker back who can make guys miss, and James White, I don't think you want to overuse him, but I think it might be a way to get the running game rolling a little bit here.
No fullback usage from the Patriots in this past game. They stayed in straight up 11 personnel the entire game. Ben Watson and some other players have been kind of bumping back into the backfield and playing that lead blocker role. We didn't really see any of that at all against Baltimore. And if you're going to be running out of these kind of single back sets, I think James White and Rex Burkhead to an extent too might even be better suited for that than Sony Michel, because Sony Michel is such kind of a power downhill runner. That's really where he's at his best. I thought it was really interesting to see on that second half touchdown drive that the Patriots had that immediately followed the Edelman fumble touchdown. The Patriots just fed James White through the second half of – these were the final plays of that drive. It was James White carry for 7 yards, James White carry for 8 yards, James White carry for 6 yards, James White carry for 1 yard, pass to Julian Edelman, James White carry for 4 yards, James White rushing touchdown. Yeah. So you don't see that level of running usage from James White. I mean, you might see him kind of get involved in the passing game that much over a short span, but it's really, that hasn't been his bread and butter over the course of his Patriots career. So definitely going to be interesting to see whether the Patriots kind of keep with this going forward. I think it would be smart for them to kind of continue to try it, because it does seem to be working a little bit, or whether this was kind of a one game, whether this whole offensive game plan was a sort of a 1 week thing and they were planning on going back to the more varied kind of concepts that and formations and packages and whatnot that they used in the past. But James White definitely ran well. He was probably their most effective runner for a long stretch of this game.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned on that drive, I mean,
should have had another touchdown too. He tripped over Marcus Cannon.
Yeah, I think that you think that James White has success on the ground because the opposing team thinks the Patriots are going to pass. But when you run with them, what is it, six times on 7 plays? At a certain point, they should probably try to figure out that they're going to be running the ball with James White. So I don't think that really played into a lot of White's success in this game. I think it was, him just running well and him being a better fit for that offense on that drive. So I don't know. I think that there is some workload issues with James White, especially as a runner, where he'll take a little bit more punishment than there would be with some other backs. And there's only been
guy.
He's 5'10", 205. There's only been one season in his career where he's had more carries than receptions. That came last season, actually. It was his most effective season as an actual runner. He's definitely been used a lot more as a pass catcher, despite his job as a running back. But he's really on pace for way fewer carries this season. In 8 games, he's only carried the ball 32 times. As I mentioned, 9 of those came in this last game. He ran the ball 94 times last season. He had 5 rushing touchdowns. So I think they were really trying to go very heavily with Sony Michel early this season. They were trying to get Rex Burkhead involved. But I don't know. I mean, James White was a good runner last year. And maybe now that they are in the stretch run, maybe now that they are facing teams that could actually beat them, maybe we actually do start to see James White's workload increased, especially in these games that they're going to be playing against the Eagles, against Cowboys, against the Chiefs, and against the Texans.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting stat. I actually wasn't aware of that because also last season was by far James White's most effective season as a receiver. So I knew that he had more success as a rusher than he typically does, but I didn't realize he actually had more carries than he did receptions, and he had 87 receptions, so that's pretty impressive.
And he had he had almost 1,200 yards from scrimmage. He had 12 total touchdowns. I was actually asked in a mailbag question this week, I forgot who it was, I can't name it off the top of my head, that I was asked if the Patriots should increase James White's workload, and I don't exactly remember the answer that I gave, but I was basically like maybe they could, but there's, it's probably best to limit him a little bit. But I think last year they overloaded White early in the season, and then they had to really scale things back because he suffered, I think it was a knee injury at some point. Maybe they were trying to flip that this year, and that, all right, we'll limit him in the first half when we know that we can win these games, and now in the second half we'll start to increase that. So, if you're in a fantasy league or something, it might not be a bad idea to actually pick up James White, because we actually might start to see him catch the ball more and run the ball more here in the second half of the year.
Definitely.
All right, let's get into Mohamed Sanu a little bit before we get out of here, because I thought that was really big that he had those 10 catches and that he was sort of Tom Brady's security blanket during that game. I think the Ravens defense was focusing very heavily on Julian Edelman this game. Edelman still caught 10 passes for 88 yards, but they needed someone else to step up, and it was Mohamed Sanu. So I was definitely impressed with what he did. A lot of them were short kind of dump-offs, but he did score a touchdown. He did pick up a lot of first downs in the game. So overall, I think there's a lot of hope for the future for Sanu in this offense.
Definitely. Very promising development. And I think even more promising is the fact that it's still a bit of a work in progress.
Right.
We still saw 2 or 3 plays in this game Sunday where it didn't look like he and Brady were on quite the same page, where he was maybe a foot or 2 away from where Brady expected him to be.
Right.
But the fact that he still had a few of those moments and then also went out and had 10 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown.
And that Brady kept throwing to him.
Once you kind of smooth out those final little creases in that connection, I think he's going to be an incredibly valuable player for them moving forward. I mean, to have 2 kind of reliable options with Julian Edelman and Mohamed Sanu, something the Patriots really haven't had so far this season.
Right.
I mean, they've had Josh Gordon had some good games, Jacoby Myers has had good games, but they haven't had, or Philip Dorsett has had a few good games as well, but they haven't had someone that can sort of contribute reliably like that on a weekly basis. And I think Sanu can be that guy in that offense. I think it'll really help him moving forward.
One final thing from the game is that N'Keal Harry was, taken off of injured reserve. He was activated on Saturday, but then he was actually inactive for the game on Sunday despite making the trip. And it was sort of surprising because Gunnar Olszewski was also inactive. So you would have thought with Olszewski down that Harry would have dressed, but both of those wide receivers were inactive. The Patriots stayed in 11 personnel for the entire game. Jacoby Myers only got one snap, and that's when Philip Dorsett went down with some sort of brief injury. So it seems like the Patriots probably weren't planning on using even their fourth wide receiver, Jacoby Myers, in this game. So they were probably thinking, all right, why are we going to dress N'Keal Harry if we're not even going to use Jacoby Myers in this game? And if it came down to it where a guy get injured like Dorsett did, they were probably going to rely a little bit more on Myers. They could trust him a little bit more as that fourth receiver over a guy like Harry, who they might have only had a very specific plan for Harry in that game regardless. But we actually saw Sanu back as the Patriots punt returner, even though he didn't actually return any punts with Gunnar Olszewski out of this game. But I don't know. I mean, it makes me wonder when we'll actually see N'Keal Harry. If this was their plan heading into this game, maybe they just wanted the extra 2 weeks to get him ready for the Philadelphia Eagles. But, I mean, this can't be a situation like it was with Duke Dawson last year where we never see N'Keal Harry. N'Keal Harry has to play in this offense, especially since they haven't been that strong so far this season.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it made more sense to me. The N'Keal Harry decision was surprising in the moment, the fact that he was not active for this game. It made a little bit more sense after I saw what their strategy for this game was, because it didn't seem like Jacoby Myers, as you mentioned, played one snap, so they weren't interested in rotating receivers whatsoever unless somebody went down with an injury. So if that's their plan going in, it makes sense to use that roster spot for somebody elsewhere, someone maybe that allows kind of Byron Cowart to come into the 46 or something of that nature. So made sense. Yeah, I'd be very surprised if we don't see him very soon. It's also a little surprising if this was their plan. Why didn't they just wait until Tuesday to activate him to the 53? But I mean, it's not that it makes a huge difference.
Point in doing that anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with you though. I do think we'll see him soon. I don't know what his role is going to be. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about what N'Keal Harry's kind of potential impact could be. Would definitely be a little surprising and maybe a little alarming. I don't know if alarming is too strong, but definitely curious if he's not active again against the Eagles next weekend. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that. And shout out to Gunnar Olszewski too for rocking the sleeveless on the sideline in 40-degree weather. He found a way to pop up on a lot of sideline cams too. So he's a character.
Yeah, that was some impressive stuff from him to be sleeveless in that game. So I mean that I think pretty much does it for this week. Let's actually. We usually play America's favorite game at the end of these podcasts. I think we can still do it by using practice squad guys.
I love it. Let's do it.
So Najee Toran, I have no idea how to pronounce his name. I can't say that I've ever spoken to Najee Toran or Toran, but he's a guard on the Patriots practice squad. Do you know where he went to school?
First thing that comes to mind is Miami, but I know that's not right because they have a bunch of other Miami guys in there. I'll stick with it. I'll say Miami, but I don't think that's right. What do you think?
I have no idea. This is the least versed I've been on a Patriots practice squad in my entire tenure covering the team.
You used to be the annual winner of the practice squad quiz.
I know.
We actually haven't done that in a couple of years. We should bring that back.
We haven't. Well, yeah, if we brought it back this year, I would suck at it because I've been looking at a bunch of big picture crap for TV. Haven't been able to get in the weeds as much. But I'm just delaying the inevitable of having to guess this. Let's go with Mississippi State. He went to UCLA.
Matthew Slater territory.
Yeah, interesting. Do you know where Nate Brooks went to school? Patriots safety.
Nate Brooks. I want to say like Minnesota.
I want to say Oregon. Did he go to Oregon? We have to actually look this one up. He doesn't have a Wikipedia page, which is usually a requirement for these. Where the hell? What is that?
Is it Marshall or North Texas?
North Texas for Nate Brooks.
I always mix up all these practice squad defensive backs. I basically always think that they're Daniel Jones or Demarius Travis, who one of them went to Minnesota, one of them went to...
Demarius Travis went to Minnesota. Was it Daniel Jones? It was Daniel...
No, David Jones.
David Jones.
That's why I kept calling Daniel Jones David Jones earlier this year. He's still drilled into my mind.
David Jones went to Richmond. So I can do past Patriots practice squad, defensive linemen, up and down.
I think I
Gauthier
got everybody
went to
else.
Miami, right?
Gauthier's Miami. Terez Hall was
Missouri.
Missouri. Obi was UConn, obviously.
Kelvin
Munson was San Diego State. Thurman is Houston.
Devin Ross. Is Devin Ross?
Devin Ross is
Oregon?
Rice, I think.
Rice.
I don't know if that's right. I think that's right, though.
I don't know why I just typed in Wishy because he doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Sometimes my fingers just do like weird things because I'm used to typing them. What the
Is he even on the? Well, I think that's him on the.
Yeah, Colorado.
I don't know who I was thinking of with Rice. Maybe it's just because his name is Ross.
I'm not gonna name a name, but one day when I was leaving Patriots access, in the parking lot that we park in, a Patriots practice squad player was seemingly buying a used car from someone, and it was like not a great used car. Like I would not have purchased this car. And I would assume I'd make less money than a Patriots practice squad player. But it was a very funny thing that I was seeing in this parking lot of a Patriots practice squad player very clearly buying like a used SUV that was probably not from the last decade from someone in the Patriots parking lot. So
the practice squad life is an interesting life. I wish we were allowed. Most media guidelines kind of prevent us from talking to a lot of practice squad players, but a lot of them have some pretty interesting stories.
Yeah, Tyler Gauthier got drafted by the XFL.
Sweet mullet too.
Yeah,
doesn't have it anymore. But.
Yeah, I think that will do it. I feel like I had. Oh, do we know if Gunnar Olszewski has a car yet?
Did he not have a car?
He didn't have a car throughout the entire summer. And even early in the season, I forgot who was asking for a ride. It was someone sort of funny. But yeah, I think it was like Brandon Bolden or something. He was like, can I get a ride? So I'm interested to see actually if Gunnar has a car. And if he does, it's 100% a pickup.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe
gigantic pickup.
Maybe a Jeep Wrangler?
Nah, definitely pickup.
Yeah, I think I'm going, yeah. All right, well, that will do it for this week's NESN Patriots podcast. Keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Watch NESN and follow Zach on Twitter at Zack Cox NESN. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Kyed.